Welcome to the first of what will be many 2018 NFL Draft Q&A videos. Over the next couple of months, each week, either on Saturday or Sunday, on the road to the 2018 NFL Draft, I'll answer your questions pertaining to said NFL Draft. How do you ask your questions? You go to Twitter, follow me on Twitter, information's in the description box, and when I ask for the questions, usually about each Friday, then you start tweeting your questions to me. And I'll try to get as many of them in as possible without making it too long. Can't answer every single one every single time, unfortunately. So if anything, make your questions good, unique, different if you can. But let's go ahead and get started with this one. Remember, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Andrew Kim kicks us off with, who is the best wide receiver in this draft class? Now, usually I like to refrain from that type of assessment unless I've seen a guy that is so clearly head and shoulders above the rest that I know nobody else is going to be able to match, no matter how many prospects I have or have not studied, watched, and graded. Two, I don't like to typically do it until I've watched all the wide receiver prospects at this time, and I've watched about 14 or 15, graded about 14 or 15 wide receivers, and pretty much all the big names. At this point in time, it's Calvin Ridley, I believe. There's still things that concern me even with that. But this is not a great wide receiver class. And unfortunately for my Bears, who desperately need help at the wide receiver position, they're going to face an important question. Is Calvin Ridley going to be worth the 8th pick? And that is a question that I don't know that I have the answer to at this particular point in time. I haven't graded enough players. I may need to go back and watch Ridley some more. And if you're wondering if the scouting report videos are coming up, yes, part of the reason they have been pushed back and delayed a little bit was because I wanted to get enough grades in the tank so that way I could sit there and record multiple scouting reports, at the same time. So that way I was always working ahead and then being able to record videos en masse. But they're coming. They're coming very, very soon after the Super Bowl. But right now it's Calvin Ridley. Mark Whalen, what is the best case scenario for the Dolphins at number 11? And please, oh God, don't say Baker Mayfield. I don't think he's the best case scenario for them. The true best case scenario, I believe, for the Miami Dolphins at pick 11, if we're saying if crap went haywire in the top 10 and somebody fell to them, it would be somebody like Quentin Nelson, somebody like Saquon Barkley, somebody like a Minkah Fitzpatrick. Those would be like maybe Bradley Chubb even. Those would be like the best case scenarios. I don't know if any of those actually play out, mind you, but your question was best case scenario. Those are the best case scenarios. Guys like Quentin Nelson, guys like Saquon Barkley, guys like Bradley Chubb, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Those would be the best case scenarios for the Miami Dolphins. Julian, any chance the Raiders get Saquon Barkley? There's always a chance, but I don't see them trading up to get him, and I don't see him falling to where the Raiders are going to be picking, which is yet to be determined, either 9th or 10th. I don't see that happening. Barkley's going top 5, I would have to imagine at this point. Especially if the Broncos sign somebody like Kirk Cousins in free agency, they might give a lot of thought to taking somebody like Barkley number 5, if he even got to him. And again, I think that's the thing with the Colts picking 3 and the Browns picking 4 and also picking number 1. I find it really, really hard to believe at this particular moment, unless there's some unforeseen circumstance that has yet to come to light, Saquon Barkley is going top 4 in this draft. Jeff Seago, where do you think Kirk Cousins ends up? You're going to hear a lot of talk about the Browns. I think you're going to hear a lot of talk about the Broncos. I think there's more desperation there for the Broncos to sign him. I believe that's where he ultimately ends up. And your thoughts on Seth Wickersham's story about the tension within the New England Patriots organization? Oh, I believe parts of it. I'm sure parts of it were embellished, but the fundamental truths are there. Because when you look at the whole thing with the Jimmy Garoppolo trade, it just didn't make any sense to trade him mid-season like that when you didn't necessarily have to, and then to only get a second-round pick for him seemed like it was something where Belichick's saying, the hell with it. Now all of a sudden you got Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels are going to find their own head coaching jobs, and they've got their own head coaching jobs after the Super Bowl. After the past couple of years where they didn't have their own gigs. What's up with that? And just looking at it and saying Robert Kraft at his standpoint, understanding that he doesn't want to see Tom Brady play for anybody else, knowing how badly that would be from a PR standpoint, thinking about it from a perspective above and beyond bigger picture than what a Bill Belichick would from a football standpoint, it's natural there's going to be tension there. And frankly, these guys have been associated with each other for 18 damn seasons now. It's natural there's going to be friction and tension, especially with the amount of success that they've had. It'd be insane if there wasn't some of this, I'm the most responsible, I totally believe the major elements of that story, because it's only logical to believe that those would be true. Everything in it, maybe not. I'm sure some of it, again, was embellished for creative effect. Some of it was maybe came from one source and wasn't necessarily verified. But the heart of the matter, the nuts and bolts of it, I totally believe. Jeff Schlegel Jr., everybody's obsessed with wanting to be like me. Don't. Be your own individual. I promise you. You'll be much happier in your life if you are. Where do you get your footage for watching draft prospects? Just look it up on YouTube. Like if you want to watch, I mentioned Calvin Ridley earlier, type in on YouTube, search Calvin Ridley 2017, and you'll see enough cut-ups of enough of his action in enough games to where you'll be able to formulate some type of grade, some type of opinion on him. That's all you got to do. Just type in the player's name and the year. Or the player's name and the team that they were facing. That'll usually be the way. Try to avoid the ones that are just highlights. Like if they say highlights in the title, it's nice to see those too if you want to get a second or third look at the best plays that they have. But the ones that are titled highlights, take out the negative, take out the bad, and they just focus all on the good. So you could get really tricked if you only watch those and sit there and say, oh my God, this guy is great, this guy is special, and then you realize he can't hit the broadside of a barn, or he has the pocket presence of Dick. I don't know. Just to give you an example. Sports fan 741, who should the Bucs take in the first round? The ideal scenario for them is Bradley Chubb. The guy they should take in the first round is Bradley Chubb. The dude that makes the most sense, is the best fit, could have the most impact for them, again, is Bradley Chubb. You get the point. It's Bradley Chubb. Joe Jones, your choice. Do you build your team around offense or defense? And Joe Jones weighs in that he might do it around defense because he feels like it's easier to get players to fit your system and you kind of plug and play, and it's easier to find value throughout the draft. And there's definitely an argument there. But ultimately, I still want to build my team around offense because that means I'm building around a young franchise quarterback, and that is the best, most effective way to build a championship team. Like even when you look at the Seahawks in this decade with the great defense, the Legion of Boom, and the guys like Bennett and Averill on the defensive line, and Bobby Wagner at the linebacking core, they're not winning shit without Russell Wilson. That's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. You got to have that quarterback. So I want to build around my quarterback. That's where I want to build around. Mex-American Martian. For the Rams at 23, who should they take? Isaiah Oliver, Willie Hernandez, Connor Williams, or Arden Key? Key's going to have some significant questions about off-the-field stuff. But if he's right, man, he could be an explosive edge rusher in that 3-4 for Wade Phillips. It's got to be Key. If you feel confident that he can keep his nose clean, he'll be committed, and that he'll be healthy, and that he'll be mentally and physically prepared for the NFL. If it is, then it's Arden Key, and it's not close. If not, then any one of those three guys could make sense. But in an ideal world, it's Arden Key. Ronnie Simmons, thoughts on Harold Landry and your pro comparison? I have not graded Harold Landry yet. I have not watched enough of him to give a full opinion. Early opinion would be a guy that was productive in college, but I have some concerns about how he transitions to the NFL. Kind of soft against the run, not very effective against the run, not as explosive as people think as an edge rusher. That's early, though. And as I go through and dive through more of his game footage, I could change my mind totally. Or I might not. It might further validate. So I don't have a pro comparison. I don't have a final grade on him and complete and total thoughts yet. They're coming, though. Don't worry. Alex Putnam. Should the Dolphins go offense or defense in round one? I think it depends on the way the board breaks down. When you look at the Dolphins, I feel like it's just a best player available type of situation. That's what it is best player available. Because you can make an argument for needs at a lot of different places. I don't know if one is so significantly greater than anywhere else that it has to be that pick no matter what, even if you take an inferior talent. For them, I don't think that's the case. Just take best player available, stay true to the board, and hope you got it right. Brian Gannon, what side of the ball should the 49ers address with their first-round pick? Again, It feels like best available player, mostly regardless of position, but not quarterback and not defensive line. You've got Jimmy G, and you've invested multiple first-round picks on that defense. Armstead, Buckner, Solomon Thomas. So you feel like you shouldn't be addressing your first-round pick in either one of those spaces. You'll hear a lot of talk maybe about a wide receiver, maybe about an offensive lineman, maybe somebody in the secondary, maybe somebody in the linebacking core. There's a lot of different places the 49ers can go. You just want to get productive, quality NFL players with that 9th overall pick or 10th overall pick, whichever pick they end up with after that coin flip at the Combine. Chase Gosney. Choose 3 wide receivers from any era, any team. Who are they? Alrighty. So if I have to choose 3, I would have preferred if you told me 4. But the 3, Jerry Rice is 1, Randy Moss is 2, and Don Hutson is 3. If I had to go 4, probably is Lance Allworth. When you look at dominance relative to the competition and the type of game that guys like Hudson specifically and also Lance Allworth played in, and if you transpose them in today's NFL game, it's easy to dismiss the white boys and say that they wouldn't be able to do it. I'm pretty sure if you put a Don Hutson in a modern NFL weight program and modern NFL system, he would still be dominant. Obviously not as dominant as he was when he played for the Packers in the 30s and 40s, but he would still be a beast. Lance Allworth would also, Bambi would be a beast. So those would be the 4 guys. Those are the 4 guys I look at and I say they're the 4 best wide receivers in NFL history. I feel like it's Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Don Hutson, and Lance Allworth. So those would be the 4. But if it was 3, I would take out Allworth and leave Hudson in. There. Seems like a good list to me. Jake Richardson. What round should the Steelers, I'm assuming it's the Steelers, he didn't quite put in the name, target a tall, speedy wide receiver if Bryant goes? Now, you could be talking about the Cowboys. You could also be talking about the Steelers. You did not give me a team. So I'll answer as if it's both. If it's the Steelers, maybe a day 3 gamble, similar to what Martavis Bryant was out of Clemson in 2014. He was, a 4th-round pick, right? Steelers seem to be able to evaluate the wide receiver position, so somewhere on day 3. If it's the Cowboys, as early as round 1. I hope that answers your question. Robert, thoughts on Mo Hurst out of Michigan? Like some of what I've seen early, haven't finished the grade, can't make a full opinion yet. Brian Ingemels, how ridiculous are the Baker Mayfield and Johnny Manziel comparisons? On the field, ridiculous. Off the field, not as ridiculous. On the field, Baker Mayfield is much more accurate, has a much stronger arm, has much better pocket presence. Not quite the improvisational guy that Johnny Manziel was, but Johnny Manziel had a borderline noodle arm. I mean, that's the real truth of the matter. Baker Mayfield profiles much more as a traditional NFL pocket passer. Off the field, Mayfield's got some questions. Mayfield's got some issues. He does some things that are just bad, not necessarily Manziel level, but I see where the comparison comes in with shorter guys, with some off-the-field baggage, some concerns. I think in general they are somewhat ridiculous because they're kind of the lazy comparison to make because it's not really close to a really good comparison. There are some similarities, but like I said, more so off the field. On the field, it's height, and that's pretty much it. That sports guy. Any quarterbacks you see New England taking, the 2 that scream out to me right now are Kyle Lauletta from Richmond, right here in Richmond, and Luke Falk from Washington State. Those are the 2 guys that scream out to me that they would be Belichick guys if they were going to draft one. It would be one of those 2 is the way I feel right now. Junior, if the Browns got Kirk Cousins, Saquon Barkley, and Bradley Chubb, do they make the playoffs in 2018? Simple answer is I believe so. You would at least get an effective NFL starting quarterback. You would get that big-time playmaking running back that you desperately needed. And now you're talking about Myles Garrett and Bradley Chubb as your 2 edge rushers. Good night, Irene, on an already pretty good defensive line in Cleveland. I feel like they would be a playoff team in 2018. Yes, yes, yes. It doesn't mean they should go sign Kirk Cousins because is your goal just to make the playoffs and get to the wild card round, or are you trying to build something that could be something for many years? You got to find the young quarterback and build around him. Yakum Flavor. How did you feel about the Jay Cutler deal when you heard about it? The first thing I heard about it, my friend Jarrell told me about it. The first thing he told me was, they traded for Jay Cutler. I thought he was ribbing me. And then he said, no, I'm not ribbing you. They traded for Jay Cutler. I said, holy hell. And my thought was at the time, the first thought that came to my mind was two things. One, well, since Jerry Angelo can't evaluate the quarterback position, he had to go trade for his guy. Number two, why would the Broncos want to give up on Jay Cutler after 3 years? That is concerning. But at least they have made the move, they have gotten the guy, and we'll see how it works out. Until I found out what the price was that they paid. As soon as I found out that the price was 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and Kyle Orton, I was completely done with the trade right then and there. That was insane. That was a ridiculous price to pay for a guy who frankly hadn't shown much of shit. Yes, he was coming off of a Pro Bowl season in 2008 with a 4,000-yard passing season, but there was no way. You're not giving up 2 first-rounders, a third-rounder, and Orton to get Jay Cutler. That's dumb. Well, Jerry Angelo did that, and that's why he eventually got fired a couple years later, because he was dumb! That was my initial reaction. It was like in phases. Big Snow. Do we put too much emphasis on draft measurements and not tape? Yes. To me, when you look at things like the Senior Bowl, the Combine specifically, when you start getting into height, weight, speed, explosiveness measurements, they should, if anything, validate what you've already seen on film. To me, I see some teams that use it as a validation of what they've already seen, and other teams that use it as the basis for their evaluation, and then try to use the film to validate what they saw at the Combine and in the pro days and in the workouts. That's not how it should be. All these other workouts and such, the Combine, should be to validate what you've already seen. That's what it should be there for. If you see a guy that lacks explosiveness and short area quickness and burst, it should be reflected in his 10 and 20-yard split and his 40, and he's probably running, if he's a receiver, something like 4.6. So you know he's not going to be a great down-the-field threat because of his speed. So that's what it should be there for. But I look at it, and you see it happen every year, and it happened this past draft. John Ross, who's incredibly fast and incredibly made out of glass, breaks Chris Johnson's record, allegedly, in the 40, and gets drafted 9th overall. And he played all of, 1 game this year. Doesn't matter if the dude is lightning fast, if he can never stay healthy and never stays on the field. And frankly, what you saw on film was not equivalent to a talent that should be taken in the top 10. But because he ran super freaking fast at the Combine, somebody was looking to gamble. Somebody was saying, hey, we'll take that speed and try to work with it. And it's understandable, but that's what gets people fired. Except when you're in Cincinnati and you're Marvin Lewis, because Mike Brown has a crush on your black cock, you're not going anywhere. BJ, who is the best fit at quarterback for the Giants at number 2? Probably Sam Darnold. That's the one that strikes me the most. Sam Darnold, I feel like, is the best fit. And then Sam Walker asks, to close us out, does Calvin Ridley being 23 already scare you as a top 20 pick in this draft? Sure, you would like him to be 20 or 21, maybe 22. It's not the be-all, end-all. Yeah, he'll be 24 as a rookie, but if you look at it, if he panned out as a top 20 pick, you'd probably be trying to give him a new deal 3 or 4 years afterwards. So then he's, 27, 28 when you're giving him a new deal, which is another 3, 4, 5 years. And then you're looking at maybe 31, 32, figuring out whether you're going to keep him or not. You could still get 8 to 10 quality seasons out of this guy potentially. So I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. And I'd feel like a hypocrite as a Bears fan who defended the trading up from 11 to 9 and the drafting of Leonard Floyd in 2016, and he was 24 as a rookie. You know, it's one of those things that if the guy works out, the guy works out. When you start taking him in the top 10, they have to really have special traits. But if he's a guy then come in at 23, 24 years of age, like somebody that you signed after a free agent that had been in the league for 3 or 4 years, then I don't see where it's such a big deal. Because honestly, if you're looking at drafting these guys, you really have to look at it, especially in the first round, in a 3 to 5 year window. first. You might start thinking about second contract down the road, but you got to worry about getting through the first contract first. So, no, I don't think it should scare teams off. If their grades indicate he should be taken in the top 20, then he should be taken in the top 20. And I believe they ultimately will. Some teams might not have him that high. They might have him more as a round 1 to 2 guy. Because they're looking at his, they're going to be concerned about his relatively thin frame and some other things. He's not the most reliable catcher for a guy that's such a hotly buzzed about prospect. But at this point in time, I definitely would be confident with taking him in the top 20. Top 10, I don't know so much yet. But anyways, thanks to all you guys that submitted your questions. That's it for this NFL Draft Q&A. Again, follow me on Twitter, and I'll be doing another one of these next week.